Okay, moving forward to our next speaker. Initially, we were supposed to have Inna Kogan speaking, but unfortunately, there was an emergency. So, her partner, Alexander Shining, who is the CEO of Business Vision Center, would be presenting instead of her. Um, Alexander, the stage is yours. Maybe you can share your screen with the presentation.
Oh, hi. First of all, I want to welcome everybody, and I really appreciate the organizers putting this conference together. Bosco is known for an excellent and outstanding initiatives, and the audience that the conference itself attracts is amazing. On one side, professionals meet those who are looking for different path to second citizenship. Hopefully you can hear me. Just let me know if the audio is okay. So this time, I'm happy to present you the opportunities of the second passport and immigration to Canada. And in this case, let me share the screen. Can you see my screen? Let me know. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your presentation.
All right. So let's get started. And Canada has an outstanding reputation in the world overall as a peaceful country with a stable economy. And today, Canada is brought to you by a consortium of two outstanding companies. It's Ina Cogan Law Firm. That is a group of experts in the legal processes of immigration, helping and providing services to applicants from around the world to succeed through numerous paths of immigration. And Canada overall is offering about 80 different paths to immigration that goes through the permanent residency first for 3 years. And in 3 years, the applicant can become a citizen and receive a Canadian passport with all the benefits that we'll be talking about later. And the second participant in this consortium is a company called Business Vision Center that is covering the business aspects of the business immigration. So first of all, Ina Kogan, as I mentioned, unfortunately, he couldn't be present today for personal reason. He had to pay attention to her family emergency, but I'd be happy to present and vouch for her as an expert with an impeccable and unparalleled track record, who is a member of the Ontario Bar Association, who's presenting applicants, representing applicants in courts and in the Supreme Constitutional Court. So it's an Ina herself is an expert helping applicants over the decades and practically succeeding in every particular case. As far as I'm concerned, I'm an investor. I'm a doctor of philosophy. Originally, as you can see with my accent that I'm struggling for a long, long time, I'm from Moscow, living in Canada for over 25 years. And the company that I started with my colleagues over the 8 years ago became one of the largest company with a track record which speaks for itself, with over 250 business applicants who went through the route of the business immigration, whom we help, and who are now residing in Canada, and 250 successful applicants with 99% of the success rate speaks for itself. So Canada. This is as you know, Canada as a country is relatively small, especially in comparison with its neighbor south of the border, the United States. Canada now counts for about 40 million residents, and it's growing very fast in terms of the number of the population. By the time when I made it here in 1999, it was a smaller country with the smaller cities more resembling peaceful, quiet towns. And there was a saying that Montreal is celebrating and Toronto is working. It was kind of unusual to see that people working 9 to 5, and after 10 o'clock at night, everything's closed and everything's peaceful. But now Canada is a huge flourishing economy with full-scale cities, though it's still 5 largest cities, including Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, Vancouver, and Winnipeg. But it's a country with stable economy. It's a country with high GDP numbers, with trading partners around the world. It's a country with excellent conditions for social life, with access to free medicine, free healthcare, and access to the wide social support network. Overall, Canadians enjoy the rank of Canada is one of the happiest country in the world. So Canada is always recognized for at least last 15 years as the country with the highest living standard and the most suitable for living, considering everything: the economy, the crime rate, the social programs, the happiness of the population, and overall. So, as I mentioned, it's access to free universal healthcare. It means everybody has the same access to the healthcare services. The multicultural feature and aspect of Canada is well known. So Canada absorbs newcomers from around the globe, and everybody is finding their communities here, and everybody finds home in Canada. And that's where the differences between, let's say, Canada and the United States starts. Because when you look at the North American population, North American society, including Canadian and American overall, from other side of the pond, then you can say they're all the same. But when you start living and looking at all aspects of life from the inside, you'll see the difference. That America is known for its concept of the melting pot. So you become American. In Canada, the concept, the social construct was that everybody who comes to Canada keep their original culture, original traditions, and being Canadian means simultaneously combining features of the original original traditions and being Canadian at the same time and putting Canadian values first. So Canadian passport. Canadian passport is one of the strongest passports in the world. And the strength of the passport is judged by two different features. Number one is the access to the visa-free countries, which Canada has agreements with. And in this case, it's roughly 184 countries as it's officially stated. At the same time, Canadian permanent residents can apply for the Canadian citizenship and receive Canadian passport after they go through the very meaningful and significant to their life process and a ceremony of oath, where they swear and give their word to value the Canadian traditions and the Canadian Charter of Rights. Just it's an interesting feature that Canada has no constitution, but it has Charter of Rights. But what is important, probably for our audience and for the subject of this specific meeting, is that Canada offers one of the, if not the fastest passport among the G7 countries. because it's 3 years, combining within the 5-year window, meaning that if you come to Canada as a permanent resident and lives in country for 3 years, then in 3 years you can apply for the Canadian passport and receive it automatically after passing the citizenship exam. If somebody, as majority of applicants do, they come and go, because you being a permanent resident, you don't have to reside in Canada and never leave the country. You can come and go as you please. That's the nature of the permanent residency. That means you don't need to ask for an approval. You can come and go as you please. You don't need anybody's permission. But in this case, if you're not permanently residing in Canada, you need to accumulate 3 years of living in Canada combined within any 5-year rolling window. So that means if you live in Canada for 1 year, you're absent for another one, and then you live another one in Canada, and then you're absent for another one. So it will take you 5 years combined. 3 years living in Canada, 2 years of being absent, and then you become you can apply for the Canadian passport and become Canadian citizen. But what is also important to mention that in terms of the rights and access to the social system and social support, access to the education, to universal and free healthcare is equal for everybody, for citizens and permanent residents alike. The only differences between Canadian citizens and permanent residents lays in the access to the voting. So that means that those who are permanent residents and not citizens, they don't vote in federal elections, and they travel outside Canada using their original passports. That's everything. So now, speaking of the way to acquire Canadian permanent residency, Canada has a concept that we don't sell Canadian passports, meaning that Canadian passive investor programs as a path to immigration are not so popular. There was one program that particular was open at one time many years ago and then shut down, called so-called Quebec Investor Program. It was reopened January 1st, 2024, and now it accepts applications, but it's one of the most expensive programs in the world offering permanent residency. The requirement is a 5-year investment of $1 million in the government guaranteed certificates. Simultaneously, 200,000 of non-refundable donation, and those who apply should prove that net worth of $2 million at least. At the same time, another requirement is to reside in Quebec, because it's a Quebec investor program, for at least 12 months combined the family. Means if there are two partners, two spouses, then each of them has to reside in Canada at least for 6 months. And the second important requirement, not the least but not last, is to have 2 years of managerial experience. So overall, Canadian immigration don't have a concept of buying into the residence and citizenship. In particular, buying the real estate doesn't qualify applicants to become permanent residency. And physical presence, as opposed to many other countries offering second citizenship, is required in order to acquire and become Canadian citizens. The knowledge of one of the official languages, French or English, is a requirement to pass the citizenship exam. So now let's talk about the business immigration, as it's in many cases suitable for visa professionals, for executives, for investor professionals, for those who look at the Canada as the springboard into the larger market like the US. as you know, North American market combined, put together, Canada and the US is about at the par with the European market. So it's a huge diversified the market with 350 million people living in the US and 40 million people living in Canada. As I said, passive investment is not most often the case in order to become permanent resident, but active investment and active business is the path. So one of the relatively recent investor in immigration program that was introduced by the Canadian government, so-called Canadian Startup Visa. It's a federal program that is aiming to attract entrepreneurs. It's a program for those who want to come to Canada, either to start a new business or to expand the existing business. And it's a federal program, meaning that as opposed to, let's say, a Quebec investor program, there is no requirement to reside in one particular province, but the applicant can leave and can stay anywhere in Canada. And in comparison with other programs and the so-called processing time, from our experience, Canadian Startup Visa is one of the shortest in terms of the process of the approval and how long it takes for the Canadian Ministry of Immigration to review and approve the applicant's permanent residency. The way how it works and the way how it's positioned itself, Canadian Startup Visa for those who want to come to Canada with innovative businesses, with businesses that are targeting to solve a specific social or economic problems in Canada, but they must be original, and there are 4 major requirements to this type of business that is qualified for the Canadian Startup Visa. The business should be innovative, meaning it should have potential to be protected from the intellectual property viewpoint, either with patents or the copyright or the know-how or the trade secret. It should have a potential to create jobs in Canada. Like I mentioned, it should have a specific target, a specific problem that it's aiming to solve, and it should have a potential to expand for the entire global market. So why it's such an unusual path to immigration? Because there are no requirements on the amount of net worth, as let's say, as opposed to another investor immigration program that people often compare. In Quebec, like I said, in the Quebec investor program, the applicant should demonstrate the net worth of $2 million. In Canadian Startup Visa, there is no such requirement. So it opens the door to a much broader potential range of applicants, first of all. Obviously, it never hurts to show funds that an applicant is ready to invest, but invest in his own business is number one, as opposed to somebody else's or the government financial instruments. And second, which is also important, there is no such thing as proof of funds. If the funds are present, then the Canadian government is happy and satisfied with the applicant's ability to invest in his own business, and it's discretion of the applicant if and when and how much the applicant wants to invest. Like I said before, the features of the innovative startups are entirely up to the applicant discretion to decide what kind of business, what kind of money the applicant wants to bring to Canada. And the process is built on an interesting way where the applicant is not in a position to convince bureaucrats from the Ministry of Immigration that he or she is qualified to receive the Canadian permanent residency. But the structure of the startup visa itself is built in such way that the applicant is communicating with so-called designated organization which is professional investment organization, not immigration, but investment organization, a group of professional Canadian investors, and the applicant has to convince them, the Canadian investors, to invest in the qualified new startups that is ready to be brought to Canada. And then if this one of the designated organizations, so organizations that's been chosen by the Canadian Ministry of Immigration to select and qualify and assess the applicants, if they give the go, if they issue the document, so-called letter of support, then the government issues the permanent residency. So it's a very unusual way how the applicants are being treated, where the entrepreneurs are dealing with less with bureaucrats from the Ministry of Immigration and more with the professional investors. So the requirements are minimal in this particular case as opposed to, let's say, investor programs. The language, it's one of the lowest language requirements, so-called CLB level 5. It's 5 out of 10. So it's a very minimal requirement of English or French. The entire family has to go through the medical examination and prove that family members are free of serious diseases and serious health problems. Adults in the application, those who are older than 18 years old, should demonstrate that they have clean criminal record, and they have to show the minimal amount of funds that the applicants will spend to feed their entire family, as opposed to, let's say, $1 million and $200,000 to be invested in the investor programs. In the particular case of the startup visa, the amount of funds to be demonstrated for, let's say, family of three, the amount of funds depends on the family structure. For the family of three, it's in the neighborhood of $20,000. $20,000 as opposed to 1 million plus 200,000 plus $2 million of net worth. So it's a minimal amount. The financial requirements, like I said, they are such that there is no specific requirement for the applicant to demonstrate in terms of his or her net worth. But the applicant should show and demonstrate by the documents provided to the Canadian immigration that he or she has a capacity to invest in his own business. The rest of the funds will be provided by the Canadian investors. So that's a very interesting and unusual structure. So the benefits of the programs, and let me, in this particular case, switch to let me stay on this page. It's informative enough, and it will tell you that, first of all, it's a direct path to immigration, like we said before. The ability to get the Canadian passport to become Canadian in 3 years. And let me mention one thing, that nowadays startup visa is very popular among about 20 countries in the world that offer startup visa. It's among them and France and the UK and some Eastern European countries and Dubai and South American countries. So lots of countries offer startup visa because everybody understands that the future of the nation depends on the technology and those people who can push the economy forward, who can bring innovative solutions to the society, who can push the society forward. And it's critically important to mention that Canada is still the only country that offers permanent residency through the startup visa. All other countries, about 19 countries offering startup visa without an exception, offer permanent status, offer temporary status, not the permanent status. So that's a status that should be renewed. In Canada, once you get your permanent resident status, you don't have to renew it. You stay in Canada for as long as you want, and in 3 years you become Canadian citizen. So minimal language knowledge, no direct investment is required. And once an entrepreneur brings a startup to Canada, he becomes eligible to grants. Canada known for its wide range of so-called non-dilutive support to businesses. That means that if business breathes and shows the progress, there are always funds that are available to the startup, and part of our job is to help applicants and businesses to get access to the funds. So this is how the process looks like. So once the concept is clear and the strategy is chosen with our professionals, that's how we work with applicants. Then we develop a specific components that are necessary to demonstrate and to show that the business actually works. And simultaneously, we find and we choose the most suitable designated organizations among about 80 companies, investment companies in Canada that are suitable for that specific type of business. We help applicants to prepare all the materials, including the business concept, the marketing materials, the sales materials, to the prototypes, the website, the sales in Canada. One of the most complicated part is to show the sales in Canada and the development of that. Then the business receives the letter of support. And once the letter of support is approved, it becomes a gold key to the applicant that opens the door for the application to the permanent residency. And then our colleague on the legal front, they put together the business part of the application, including the letter of support and the personal documents of all applicants. And that becomes an application for the permanent residency. And our legal department and our professionals, including Ina Kogan and her colleagues, they apply for the permanent residency status. The beauty of the Canadian startup visa that it allows simultaneously to apply for the permanent resident status and to apply for the work permit that applicants acquire within 2 to 6 months and can come to Canada, develop their startups, and start living Canadian life without waiting for the approval of the permanent residency that may take a longer period of time. So overall, the preliminary stage will take 2 to 6 months, and the processing time nowadays may be within a year, and you can come to Canada within 2 to 6 months and start living your life. If there are legal firms or business companies or business associations within our audience now, we welcome partners and agents. We have special programs. Our agents and partners are in a position to choose how much money they choose to make on every deal, and we have a special referral program. So we more than welcome any discussion regarding the future partnerships. And in this presentation, I'm happy to recommend you once again our professional team with 100% success rate, with many years of unparalleled experience. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And I represent Business Vision Center, and I represent Ina Kogan Legal Law Office, the most prominent companies dealing with the Canadian business immigration. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer your questions now or later.
Thank you so much, Alexander. That was a very insightful presentation. We do have actually a few questions in the Q&A tab. So maybe you can answer some of them now. The first question sounds, what is the comparison of Canada immigration program with American?
No, first of all, as you know, as I mentioned before, it's not only in comparison with American, but it's in comparison with the 19 other startup visa programs in the world. Canada still is the only country that offers permanent residency directly. So startup visa is a direct path to the permanent residency. Canada is the only country offers that. And the other advantage, probably most of you heard about the new gold visa in the States, where the applicants should contribute $5 million in exchange of the green card or permanent residence status in America, and you can compare it with a minimum of $20,000 of so-called settlement funds in Canada, and no particular requirements on the network in order to go through the startup visa route.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And the next question, how changed the immigration process to Canada after Trump's election?
That's a very good question. It changed in a way that there is a specific types of countries that are more popular that provides the sources of the Canadian permanent residents and the sources of the new Canadians overall. And those are usual suspects like China and India and Eastern Europe and some European country and the Middle East. Nowadays, all of a sudden, we found a new type of applicants. They are Americans. And Canada welcomes everybody. There is no exception. People from Russia can apply for the Canadian permanent residency. There are no restrictions. So in this case, Canada is wide open for everybody.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And the next question is, who can be eligible for Startup Visa Canada?
Like I said, there are specific requirements, and we'd be happy to discuss every particular case. And my suggestion would be not to look at the broader picture, but to look at your specific situation. Feel free to pick up phone or send us an email. We provide our contact details, and we'll look into your specific situation, and we'll help you to choose the best and the optimal and the least expensive way to immigrate to Canada in your particular case, not generic.
Mm-hmm. That's a very tailored solution. And we also had one question when we received the registrations. What happens if the business fails? Does it affect immigration status? I believe it's in regards to the program.
Yeah, excellent question. Excellent. And I want to appreciate you for this question. Like I said, because Canada is the only country that offers permanent residency status for the applicants through the startup visa, as opposed to temporary status being offered by 19 other countries. As you understand, when an applicant receives a temporary status, he has to renew and prove himself every time when the visa expires. As opposed to that, permanent status means that the failure of the business doesn't affect your immigration status. And it's an interesting and it's very critically important, very important question that Canadian immigration states in black and white on its own government website. The question literally is phrased this way: how my immigration status being affected if the business shuts down? And the Canadian government says loud and clear that we recognize the risks of the businesses, especially startups, and the failure of the business is not going to affect your immigration status. You still a permanent resident, and you still have a potential to become a Canadian citizen in 3 years.
Amazing. And we received one more question. What is the required ratio between the application's own funds and the total amount of funds for the startup, and what is the total amount needed?
That's another good question. And like I said, there are no specific requirements for the funds to be invested in the company or provided by the applicant. None, zero. So the only funds that are to be demonstrated are so-called settlement funds, means the money that the applicant will spend feeding his or her own family for the first 6 months. And like I said, the amount is dependent on a number of family members. For, let's say, just to give you a rough estimate, for the family of 3, so mother, father, and the child, so it will be roughly 20,000 Canadian dollars. 20,000. For the family of 4, it will be, let's say, 25,000, and so on and so forth. But this money that's to be proven by the bank statement, nothing else. When it comes to the applicant's own investment, it should be it can be liquid, it can be in in any shape and format, but critically important that there is no specific amount that the applicant has to prove. There is no requirement for the network to prove, as opposed to, let's say, in Quebec investor programs that requires an investment of $1 million, 200,000 donations, and a proof of $2 million of network. So startup visa is completely free, and there are no requirements on a specific network amount.
It's indeed very impressive in comparison with other programs. I think on this note, for now, we don't have any more questions, but I'm sure that would be by the end of the our session. So maybe we can ask more during the Q&A. Thank you so much, Alexander.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.